Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. It has been quite a while since I've recorded. Spring has been very rough for me physically. I've had a lot of fatigue, migraines, light sensitivity, etc., etc. So, been having trouble not only recording, but getting the reading I want to get in. I actually was behind my schedule for getting 100 books read this year. I caught up by getting a few like fluffy-ish things read, but for a while I was 2 or 3 books behind. So that's not like me. But yeah, I am finally trying to get a recording in. It is currently June 8th. We are going into June 9th. It'll probably turn over to June 9th whilst I'm talking to you, either during this video or the one I plan on recording immediately after. But this particular video I want to focus on nonfiction, and then the next video that I plan recording right after, I hope to focus on fiction. So I guess that being said, let us go ahead and get started. I guess I will start with things I might have finished. Actually, I need to pull up my story graph to give myself an idea of what I've possibly read, because I think I finished a couple things since I last spoke to y'all. So let me take a look at my there we go. There we go. Okay, so I don't have one of the books still here, but the first one I finished, I'm not sure if I finished it. I don't think I had finished it last time I talked to you. I finished the Book of Kells. Oh, yes, I did, because I talked about how the fact, I think I said wanted to make sure I finished, or I wanted to make sure I would read that again later with a magnifying glass, because there's so many details that I do feel like I missed, just because I didn't have a magnifying glass. But after that, actually, I'm going to make my screen a little brighter so I can see what I'm doing. So I finished the Book of Kells. I know last time I mentioned that I was reading or listening to 2 other books. One was Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in the Silicon Valley. And that was by John Carreyrou. John Carreyrou. And then also I was going to start reading Thicker Than Water, which was by Tyler Schultz, which is an Audible exclusive book. These 2 books are linked. They're about the same topic. Carreyrou's Bad Blood is about Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos scam. And I really enjoyed that. I have seen multiple documentaries speaking about Theranos, which, as someone with a medical background, having previously been a nurse, and then just it's an interesting story psychologically, just dealing with Elizabeth Holmes. Just her story and the way she went about things is interesting, but also it's quite scary how long she got away with what she's doing. And I don't think you can even say alleged, because she has been convicted, even if she is attempting to weasel her way out of things. She has been convicted. There's been enough evidence that Theranos never worked, that when they drew blood from the finger stick, they were not using the Theranos equipment because it was not accurate. It would fail the I forget the name of it. We used to have to run these checks at night for the quality controls. We used to run these at night for our blood sugar monitors. On night shift, that's what we had to do. Every night we would have to run the quality control test. And if the quality control test failed on a blood sugar, on a glucometer, we would have to send it back to the lab and they would have to recalibrate it. Well, for Theranos, when the Theranos machines, the Edison, or even what was the other one? I think they called it the little. I can't remember what you call the other one, but they would consistently fail the quality control test, and eventually, she and her boyfriend slash second in command, they would get mad at lab people and the people who were just in charge of the machines, pointing out, hey, I ran the quality control. It's consistently failing. Hey, this is not safe. We should not be using this. The results from these machines that are not passing quality controls, we should not be using these results and sending them out, because we could seriously hurt patients this way. But Holmes and her boyfriend just didn't care. And that level of, I don't know, that's selfishness, just that level of self-absorption where you really only care about yourself and your own desires and goals. It wasn't like she wasn't aware. There were emails sent out. It's a really interesting story. Just the lengths that were lengths to which she went, and the lengths to which her boyfriend went, to try to hide the fact that Theranos was basically a scam, to intimidate those who would wish to hold Theranos to account, who wish to protect the people that they were going to be sending blood results out to. The lengths to which Elizabeth Holmes was willing to go to protect her own interests over that of patients is absolutely astounding. And I would really recommend reading Bad Blood. I thought it was a great read because I've kept finding myself watching documentary after documentary. I'm just like, you know what? I just need to finally listen to Bad Blood. And I really enjoyed it. So after that, I listened to Thicker Than Water, which it's called Thicker Than Water, the untold story of the Theranos whistleblower. And so he was one of the whistleblowers, but he was the grandson of one of the members of the board. She had quite a star-studded board. She had politicians, she had well-known businessmen, or former businessmen. She had like the guy who was involved with like Fox News, and I can't remember his name. It's escaping my mind right now. But I want to say she had Kissinger. She had, like I said, quite a few big names she had on her board, but notably she had no one with medical background because she didn't want anyone who could point out that what she was doing was not doable, was not feasible. So she didn't have anyone with medical background, and she also notably had no women. She was very good at being able to charm men, particularly older men, into believing whatever she said. I don't think women were completely immune to her ability to charm when she wanted to charm, but men were a lot more vulnerable to her. So this was just very interesting. There was actually a rift in his family, Tyler's family, because he chose to be a whistleblower. And his story about what it was like to experience being a whistleblower and all the pressure that's brought to bear against him was just, it's pretty amazing to listen to. And he also, I believe, is he narrates his own book. So yes, definitely recommend this. I would recommend this after listening to Bad Blood, however, just because I think listening to Bad Blood or reading Bad Blood and then listening to Thicker Than Water, you get a more complete picture. So yes, I would recommend that. I also listened to, I think I had the Kindle book as well, but it's a book called Lost Heirs of the Medieval Crown. And I'll try to pull up the cover here. The Kings and Queens Who Never Were. And this is by J.F. Andrews with Roger Clark as narrator. Actually, I'm going to bring this up in Goodreads, because Goodreads gives me a better ability to look at the cover. Oh, actually, before I pull up that one, let me just show you the cover for both Bad Blood and... So that's the cover for Bad Blood. Just a black cover with the red. And then Thicker Than Water. Now the next one that I listened to and finished was Lost Heirs of the Medieval Crown by J.F. Andrews. I really did enjoy this one. It was a quick book to listen to. I'm not sure how long the book is when you read it, like as in like how many pages, but this, let's see, actually my story graph, it's 7 hours and 54 minutes, and I really got through this quite quickly. Really enjoyed it. Not a whole lot, well, I was going to say not a whole lot I haven't heard already, but that's not quite true. There were definitely some heirs or possible heirs that I had never heard about. Their stories were quite interesting, particularly when looking at one of the last, when you're looking at the male line of the brother right after the Black Prince, his line of males. So you would have, it was like his son, and then his grandson. I think it might be his great-grandson by the time you were looking at
Henry Bolingbroke, but I just couldn't remember the name. So,
yes, this very long section of ums and uhs was just meant to say Henry Bolingbroke. And Henry Bolingbroke's son. They were the ones who had to worry about this particular young man who had a potentially better blood claim than they did to the crown. The son of John of Gaunt, but he was kept alive because they were able to, without too much argument, convince the people that, hey, we don't want to go through another regency with a very young child as heir. So it was quite easy for John of Gaunt's son to get the crown, although he did keep an eye on this particular, I think it would have been actually his great, some sort of cousin, great second, I don't know the levels of cousin. Anyway, it would have been the great-grandson of his uncle. And this young man managed to stay alive not only through that particular king, but the reign of his son. So definitely a survivor. He just kind of kept his head down. Very interesting. You do learn about people who, besides the obvious people like Empress Matilda, Stephen, King Stephen's son, Eustace, besides those particular obvious people who would have been the lost heirs, you do learn about other people that you wouldn't necessarily thought of. So yeah, I did enjoy this. I thought it was quite an easy listen. The chapters didn't feel too long, which was nice because I really felt like I needed a nice, easy listen because I kind of had stalled on The Last Viking. I'm not sure if I'm kind of, Anglo-Saxon England out. If I've just been reading too much on that particular area of medieval history, I just need to kind of move on a little bit. But this book went a lot faster, and even though I still haven't finished The Last Viking, maybe I need to switch over to Kindle for Last Viking. I found on my, I use a couple library apps just because I am basically homebound. It's very difficult for me to leave the house. So I get my library books via library apps. And I got this particular book via Hoopla. If I can't find a book on Libby, I generally look on Hoopla. And this book I found on Hoopla, it's called The Viking Saint, Olaf II of Norway by John Carr. I'm not familiar with the author. And I really only picked this up started reading this on a whim. It's not a terribly long book. It's about, let me see how many pages. It's 224 pages. And it's put out by Pen and Sword. Let's see. Pen and Sword, yeah. And I actually follow them on Instagram when I'm actually on Instagram. I found this book to be easy to read. It was a little confusing at some points because there were names that were shared just in the Norse world. There were several Olafs, and I think there's one like Olof, O-L-O-F, I think there was. Then there's just a couple people who shared the same name in that area, in the Norway let's see, it was Norway. They had, it was Sweden. It was that whole area there. There would be people who shared names, so I would get a little confused about sometimes where we were at. But that had less to do with the author and more to do with they just shared names, just because those are names of that particular area of the world. It wasn't that the author made it to make it clear. If I was tired, it was hard for me to keep track. But it was easy to read. Initially, I was annoyed because it seemed like the author wasn't citing their sources. And that wasn't quite true. He just wasn't citing in the way that I am used to from historical books. I'm used to being able to, on my Kindle, hit the little link with the footnote and then have it take me there and then be able to go back again. The way this author chose to do it is he made it very clear when he was quoting Snorri or some other source, but he also had at the end a list of his sources, with Snorri being the one he leaned on the most, just because Snorri is in a lot of ways considered the most comprehensive and accurate of the Norse, historians of that era. But, I mean, there is definitely a bias in favor of St. Olaf, although the author would point out things that, were definitely his more violent tendencies based on the fact that he was definitely of the Viking world, and it was a period of time that if you wanted to spread your religion, it was a very violent time of doing so, and he was very much of a product of his time. He also didn't have a problem mentioning that, okay, some of Snorri's more fantastic stories, there's some question of whether or not they are accurate, although he would point out that, there's, just because some of the things might not be completely accurate, there could be XYZ reason that this story came down through time. Just because it seems odd to us doesn't mean that it was completely false and that the stories didn't have, sorry, I'm moving things around, have a certain impact at that time in a more religious period than now. So I did enjoy this. I did feel like it filled in nicely with some of my other studies of this time period, because most of my focus of the Anglo-Saxon period has been in England. It was nice to kind of take that over to Norway, especially since Olaf was very much, definitely had his connection to, I think it was Canute, because he had been involved with the taking down of the British London at that time period. So it was a nice way to really segue from England to Norway. Yeah, I really enjoyed the Vikings saint. Okay, so that's Saint Olaf. I did enjoy it. Wish he had cited his sources more throughout, but he did cite them at the end. He did mention when he was referencing Snorri. It's just not quite in the way I'm used to. What next? Let me get out of here. Okay, so then... Actually, the next part I'll save for later. I'll go on to what I'm reading now, currently reading, for nonfiction. Still reading Bede. I also have Bede on audiobook for when I just feel like I need to listen to it. But I really need to pick up my pace for Bede, because I am currently in book 2, so that is this is the second book on the history of the Church of the of the Church of the English people. Oh, okay, actually I'm not far off in book 3. I just need to pick up my pace a little bit. As you can see, so this is my marker for the footnotes. But let me actually be fair to this. Here's my explanatory notes. Okay. So from here to here is what I need to read. So I'm going to probably still be reading Bede even into the next quarter, because I don't anticipate finishing it before this quarter's over. And I'm not going to leave it unfinished. The other one I'm currently reading is Word Horde. I did find, I think last time on video, I found where the footnotes are. This is actually a bit of a harder read than I anticipated. Maybe just because it's hard to keep in my brain. It does help, I feel like, to try to say aloud some of the words when they're talking about them. I mean, there's interesting stuff in here, but it's definitely not as easy to read as I thought it would be. Word Horde, daily life in Old English. I'm hoping as I get deeper in, it'll be a little bit easier. Now, I did find interesting when they were talking about the different ordeals. So there's Korsned, I'm probably mispronouncing that, is one of the 4 ordeals referred to in the Old English law books to determine an accused person's guilt or innocence. So it then goes through the ordeals. Boiling water, everyone, I think everyone knows about this one. You suspend a stone in a vessel of boiling water, wrist deep or elbow deep, depending on the required severity. The accused must lift out the stone with one hand. Afterwards, the accused's hand must be bound and left otherwise untreated. Unwrap the hand after 3 days. If it is infected, the accused is guilty. And then the next one is hot iron. Very similar. You have to carry the iron ball and for a certain distance, and then again wrap the hand for 3 days. If the hand is infected, the accused is guilty. Cold water is the one I think everyone thinks of from the Monty Python skit, where they're submerged in the cold water. So first, a priest must exercise and consecrate a pit of water, then tie the hands of the accused below their knees and lower them into the water. If the accused sinks to a depth of 1.5 ells, about 2 or 3 feet, they are innocent. If the accused floats, it means the sanctified water is rejecting them for their sins, thus proving their guilt. I would think maybe eat a nice, heavy meal right before that. I'm sure there were things that they had to do to make sure they didn't do that. And then the fourth one is Korsned, I'm not pronouncing it right. The accused must place an ounce of bread and cheese in their mouth. If they can easily swallow it, they're innocent. If they choke or have difficulty swallowing, they are guilty. And they're talking about how, I guess the bread was just drier during that time period, and so this would actually be more difficult than one would think. But, I mean, people go back and forth in this because some people are saying, well, the bread was drier. And other people are like, well, no, this is actually what people ate. It wasn't, like just something they would give to dogs or whatever. It wasn't unpalatable. another person's theory is that when you're nervous, your throat constricts and your mouth becomes dry, and you can get nausea or upset stomach, which actually to me makes a lot of sense. And according to the 11th century law codes, this particular ordeal, the corsned, the one for bread and cheese, is intended for a friendless altar servant, a priest or cleric of limited power with no kinsman to support his oath. And this term, corsned, means like decision bite, and it'll be seen as God's own judgment. And they said that one secular, rather spontaneous example is in 1053 when Godwin, Earl of Wessex, denied his own treachery to King Edward the Confessor at a royal banquet, saying, "God forbid that I should swallow this morsel if I am conscious of anything which might tend either to your brother's danger or your disadvantage." And according to William of Malmesbury, on saying this, Godwin was choked with the piece he had put into his mouth and closed his eyes in death. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting, all the information about the ordeal, the trial, by ordeal. Yeah. I forget which queen it was who, to prove her innocent, English queen, she had to walk on coals, because the story is that after she walked on coals, she was like, okay, when are we starting? And she'd already done so and her feet were fine. I want to say that was Queen Emma, but I'm not completely sure. I want to say it's Queen Emma because I read it fairly recently. But anyway, yeah, this has some interesting things in here, but it's been a bit of it's been a bit of a harder read than I thought it would be. Not because it's just a little drier than I thought. But I do intend to try to finish this, put a little bit more focus on, but it is hard to read right now. Has been hard to read right now when I've been so fatigued. I did, as the last nonfiction book that I've read during this period of time, I started reading Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. Last one of his books that I read, I think he actually wrote it after this one, was David and Goliath. And I had picked up quite a while back a set of Malcolm Gladwell's books that someone was selling on Amazon. It was 4 of the books, and then they threw in this book. And so I got 5 of his books for really cheap. So this is the first one I'm reading. This is the one my dad highly recommended. So I'm really enjoying it so far. What I enjoy about Gladwell's styles, it's very easy to read. He does a lot of storytelling to make his point, which makes it even easier to read. And yeah, I just am really enjoying it. He makes a focus. I wrote in my margins that the formula for success, at least as of, I'm headed into chapter 3, but as of, through the first 3 chapters, it seems like the formula for success is talent plus hard work plus opportunity. And I have a feeling he's just going to keep, pounding this in. But, yeah, at this point, he's gone through the 10,000-hour rule, which for a lot of people seems to add up to about 10 years. And it's not just 10 years of staying the same, of doing the one thing. It's, of constantly trying to improve. And I have noticed that you get to a point where you might consider yourself maybe not expert, but very close to being expert at something if you continue during that time period to push yourself up to your highest possible level. And I'm going to give 2 examples. I'm a knitter, and I have been knitting approximately 11, 12 years. During that period of time, first of all, I am self-taught, but during that period of time, I have kept pushing myself. Okay, I started with knitting a sweater. Then okay, here's a plain sweater. Then here's a colorwork sweater. Then here's a cabled sweater. Okay, well, let's try a more complicated one. Let's add a zipper. Okay, here's buttons. And you just keep upping. Okay, let's add more charts. Let's add a hood. Just different things. Just keep pushing the envelope. Now, brain fog has prevented some of the pushing the envelope that I might like to do. But, and then I started designing things, even though it might not be sweaters, okay, I've knit a bunch of socks. Now let's try designing a sock. Let's try designing color work. So if you keep challenging yourself, you get to the point where you are at, you reach what he considers. So he says that after, what's his 10,000 hour rule? So it's the 10,000, what is the 10,000 hour rule of general success? So he says that the researchers settle on what they believe is the magic number for true expertise, 10,000 hours. So I could say at this point, if I am not brain fogged, I could probably work just about any knit pattern because I have kept building my level. Now, yes, for things I've never done before, it might take a little bit longer. Example, if I was to go and do brioche, I would have to focus a little bit more, even though I've attempted brioche before I started when I was developing brain fog. But because I have built up my skills in other areas and kept increasing the level of difficulty as I've gone, or have branched into other areas, not just doing sweaters, also doing socks, also doing toys, etc., etc. So I've not stayed static. It's not like over the past 10 years, I've only worked, say, blankets at a certain level, never pushing myself any higher. A good example for me of having, the ability to do something but not pushing any farther is my drawing. I can draw. Actually, my logo for my channel is something that I drew. I do have the innate ability to draw. My dad is a painter. Not by profession, he is self-taught, but he's another example of someone who, he took base talent and, he studies Da Vinci, he studies all these different artists, and then he keeps pushing himself farther and farther and farther. And so he's up to a level of true expertise. Our house is filled with oil paintings. We basically live in a gallery. So, but because he continues to challenge himself, he reaches a level of expertise. But in comparison, even though I was born with innate talent, probably, from his side of things, both my sister and I were born with innate talent, and I was given the basics. I was taught the basic shapes. I was taught to see things as an artist would. But because I am not consistently drawing, trying different mediums, challenging myself, I have not gone beyond a certain level because that's not where my interest lies. I don't have the passion for that, so I'm not going to reach past a certain level until I start pushing myself farther. So I am stagnated. It doesn't mean that I'm incapable of doing it. If I was to decide to put my focus on it and to keep building upon it in, approximately 10,000 hours, the, 10-year mark, if I do a certain amount of hours per day, I could reach a level of expertise. But I have to push myself. Now, I am probably at a higher level than I would be if I had I'm higher level than I probably should be based on how little I focus on drawing because I have taken those skills and applied them in other areas. So I have the basic skills of drawing, and I have been taught to see the world in basic shapes. I didn't use that as for drawing, but I did use that for knitting. I design crochet toys. So I can now see, this animal, here's a circle, here's a sphere, here, all these different shapes. I break that animal into the basic shapes, but because I had former training in artwork, that gave me the skills to build upon for designing for toys. So it's just, I did build upon a base knowledge, but I took it in a different direction. But anyway, yeah, Outliers covers several things beyond just the formula of success of the 10,000 hours. I'm really enjoying this so far. I do need to keep going with it. Some of the things I found surprising about how, like, when you are born can actually really affect things that are out of your control that can actually affect success and why they might affect success. So yeah, I would recommend this. He is easy to read. Yeah, I'm enjoying that. I think that's all for my nonfiction. Oh, let me actually show nonfiction stash enhancement, and then I can show the fiction stash enhancement when I get to that point. This one, let me see if I can get this label out without scratching this up too much. This book I kind of picked up on a whim. It was inexpensive. I can't remember why. If I hit a sale or what it was. There we go. What Jane Austen ate and Charles Dickens knew. From fox hunting to whist, facts of daily life in 19th century England. I think this will be nice when I get to that period of time. Nice quick read. Just kind of fun. I mean, not there yet. But when I get to there, I think this will be fun. This has come up a couple times as suggested reads for me. Indispensable pool has gathered together the facts of daily life in 19th century England, and no one who likes an occasional dip in the period's history or literature can afford to be without it. And I've read a couple books that focus on just random things to do with Jane Austen's period of time. It takes me a little past that once I go into Charles Dickens. But yeah, I look forward to this. It should be a quick read when I get to it. Yeah, put this down here. And then finally, my Princeton books came in. I hit that, I think it was a 70% off, no, 50% off sale. When one of the people in Historathon mentioned it. I can't remember who did. I don't have the Historathon Discord pulled up. But he mentioned that there was a sale going on, so I went ahead and, oh, this got bent. Must have been just the way I had it stored. Okay. That there was a sale going on, so I went ahead and took advantage of it. First one I picked up was Memphis under the Ptolemies. This is second edition. This will be something I can read next year for the first quarter of the Historathon. So this would be nice. I don't know a whole lot about the Ptolemaic period other than Cleopatra. So this would be fun. Because, I mean, there were quite a few Ptolemies before her. Because she was last of them. So I look forward to this. I'm sure it will be a quite a heavy read because this is a Princeton book. And actually, apparently, I picked this up before that sale. This was on their books as well. This was in their catalog, which I didn't know when I picked it up a while back. Then this book, no kidding, weighs 4 pounds. Like, this is so heavy to lift. It's by John Blair, an emeritus professor of medieval history and archaeology at the University of Oxford, an emeritus fellow in history at the Queen's College, Oxford. His books include, The Church and Anglo-Saxon Society and The Anglo-Saxon Age, a very short introduction. I'm actually going to put this down a second because this book is heavy. So it's a 4-pound book. I was told in the Historathon group that if I don't like it, at least I have a good weapon to work with. This is the winner of Historathon's, winner of the Historians of British Art Book Prize pre-1600, shortlist for the Wolfson History Prize, and a History Today Best Book of the Year. A radical rethinking the Anglo-Saxon world that draws on latest archaeological discoveries. So this will be interesting. I definitely wanted this in physical form because it features a wealth of color illustrations throughout. And now it has that glossy page that I'm not particularly fond of, but I mean, it probably is a textbook, which probably has something to do with it. But yeah, I look forward to eventually reading this again. This is not going to be this quarter because we're almost at the end. I really can't afford to pick up reading a book quite this thick. But there are a lot of maps. pictures. Not quite many pictures I thought there would be. But that's just me flipping through. So I do look forward to reading this when it gets to that point. Now, the last one I picked up was actually kind of I was just looking for one more book, and I found this one kind of by accident because it doesn't really fit in with all the other ones. And this falls right into my area. And this I can read at any period of time. Doctor Stories, The Narrative Structure of Medical Knowledge by Catherine Montgomery Hunter. So this is health/literature. Addressing readers on both sides of the patient-physician encounter, Catherine Hunter looks at medicine as an art that relies heavily on telling and interpreting a story, the patient's story of illness and its symptoms. So I am very interested in this, from different perspectives, both as someone who has been a nurse, and so interpreting the stories of the patients has been a very big part, or had been a very big part, because I'm no longer able to be a nurse, but it had been a very big part of the way I approached being a nurse. When possible, I would try to not just, not just go at the surface level. I would pursue farther. They would tell a part of their story, then, okay, take that farther. Keep asking questions. A big part of understanding patient what's going on with them and actually catching issues before they become bigger issues is to listen to their stories. But I also have experienced the patient-physician encounter from a patient's perspective as being someone with chronic illness and chronic illnesses that are not terribly well known yet at this point. Some of these diagnoses are only fairly recently become not well known, but more known in the medical community. There have been doctors who have never heard of my diagnoses. And actually, my diagnoses have been some that I didn't even learn about in nursing school. So the art of storytelling has been a part of passing on to the doctors on the other side of this encounter give them a fuller picture of my experience. Anyway, the other thing that makes this interesting for me, besides the medical perspective and the patient perspective, is from the perspective of someone who actually does write. So this will be an interesting book. I have a feeling that once I start reading this, I will make my way through this quite quickly. What else do I have to say on this? I think that's about it. So that's it for my nonfiction. Do I have anything else I want to start reading? Well, I shouldn't start reading anything else for nonfiction at this period of time because, I am actually reading. I don't know if I'll finish it at this point because I'm not actually enjoying it that much. I am reading as well. I started by reading it, then I started listening to it. And like I said, I think I might have overloaded myself on Anglo-Saxon England this time around. And it might be just simply that I'm not enjoying the way it's written. It's Athelflaed, the Lady of the Mercians. And I've been listening to it and reading it on Kindle at the same time. I'm flipping back and forth. And it doesn't help that Athelflaed at this point hasn't been a huge part of the story. It's been very much focused on the background, and I've basically gone over this again and again in multiple books during this period of time, and I just think I'm kind of over it. And so we'll see if I actually manage to finish this. I am about 41% done. I should just buckle down and finish it, because I'm 41% done. I forgot. I am listening to, and I have been enjoying this. I need to continue listening to it. The White Ship, Conquest, Anarchy, and the Wrecking of Henry I's Dream. And this is nice because it's a little bit of a different time period than I have been doing. Still England. Excuse me. But it's nice to have gotten out of Anglo-Saxon England. And this is by Charles Spencer, narrator Richard Trinder. And I do have this, I believe, on Kindle as well. but I've been enjoying listening to that. So yeah, now that's everything for my nonfiction. I don't really want to start anything else unless I finish The White Ship, and I want to start something else Audible because I think I should be. I've been spending way too much time on YouTube, and I really need to get back into listening to my audiobooks so that way I can get through. First of all, get a little more reading done, but also waste less time. But yeah, that's it for my nonfiction this time. After I finish recording this, I will go ahead and start recording.
When I had recorded this originally, I hadn't yet recorded the fictional episode. I have since done that, and it's already up. So
God bless. Bye.